spit like somebody right. Into the dab. The bitch dab. You know how you high and you don't want to be high no more?
Are y'all letting people spit in your assholes?
Brunchigos, bitch.
All right, guys, we're back. Yeah, and we've got a guest with us.
Yeah, my sis Janae.
Hi guys.
All the way from...
All the way.
Well,
Rhode Island.
Yes, it's all of our guests have been traveling for us. Yeah.
Well, it's only a
Back here too.
So we met in college.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
Yes.
What year was that? 05?
05.
Yeah.
Whoa, that was a long time ago.
We got
15
deep
years ago?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
heavy.
Yeah. It was, okay, quick story how we met. I had a dance company at my college, I'm not going to tell you where. But she came in, she auditioned, and we had to bring her back for a second audition. It's like, we wasn't sure right quick. And then when she was leaving, she was like, did I make it or not? And I was like, whoa. I was like, whoa.
It was very stressful.
And I was just like, I like her. Because, like, should I make it or not? And I was like, I'll let you know. But I think she made it, well, because she was good, but I think she made it because of that. Because I like that about you.
I didn't show my personality when I was trying out.
Yeah.
I was like all closed in.
But we became really cool, really close. I think she was one of the only people that kind of got me a little bit in that. Most people didn't necessarily like my methods. The method to the madness.
I love you, boo. You can't do no wrong in my eyes.
Thank you. But she's here because we're going to interview her, or she's going to tell her story more so. And I do have questions because she has a very interesting story that I think a lot of women and a lot of men eat as well, because if you're in a relationship with a woman, could understand and relate to this. And she's going to tell her story. There's a lot of stuff that I've never asked her about, things that happened on in her life. And she said that she would love if people would ask the questions and have the chance to talk about it. So I think that is, so I was like, if that's the case, then come on our podcast. I think people would love to hear about it. And yeah, so here we are. And one of the things that we notice is that when we have these type of more serious interviews or topics, people seem to be a lot more engaged. I think it's because people can relate to other people's stories, of course, and sometimes they don't want to relate to a celebrity. They want to relate to someone that is just like them. There's a person that is more so that they can see themselves in their shoes. And so I think that's where it comes from. And so I like doing these interviews. So I don't know so let's start with your first pregnancy and what happens, and that is with Zola, correct?
Yes.
All right, so tell us a little bit about that part.
So it starts with Zola, but it started a little bit before that.
Okay.
So I was, I am a woman who does not have a regular menstrual cycle. I am very irregular. I am irregular to the point where now studies say that if you do not have a cycle every 60 days, you should take a medicine to induce it, because they're now finding out that it leads to ovarian cancer because everything's piling up and it's becoming toxic to your body. So I was one of those people. I sophomore year in college, I probably got my period twice that year. And for me,
Twice in a year?
Yes.
And that's supposed to happen every 30 days, right, guys?
Yes. 28 to 32, depending on how you flow.
Okay.
But and for me, I was just like, hey, whatever, no hassle, no stress. But when you get in a relationship and you find a partner that you start future planning with, it starts to dawn on you oh.
Because in college, you always something you want. That was so this is you always talk about having kids.
Yes.
And I don't understand people like that, but to each his own. People that I want to have kids.
I was the forever aunt. So
okay.
When you're used to being helpful and helping your nieces and your nephews and your cousins and your godchildren at an early age, it just becomes a part of you. And in my family, we take people's babies in. Like, we help those who need help, who are struggling with childcare, daycare. They're in bad relationships and can't see it, so their children just become a byproduct of it. And instead of letting their children go through that process, we take care of them. So when you have that mentality and that state of mind, it's like, well, yeah, if I can help raise somebody else's kids, why don't I deserve to have kids? Okay. So when I met my husband,
because she's married, y'all.
I am married. And we started our relationship, and things became very clear very early that this was going to be serious and it was going to be long term. I had to have a conversation with myself, like, okay, maybe you should go find out what's going on with you, because I would never want to put anybody in a situation where we get to a point where everything's hot and heavy and, like, you know, you see yourself with this person in the future, and I can't provide you with something that, as a woman, I feel like I should be able to do. And if that's a deal breaker for you, I wanted to know early, so that way it didn't progress into something that would be hurtful for me. More than the normal heartbreak. And I'm very, like, hard and don't do rejection, so I don't put myself in situations like that. Right. I'm not a crier, so, like, for me it was like, let's find this out now, so that way if we gotta split ties, then it's okay at this point.
So you had a conversation with your then boyfriend or fiance?
Boyfriend.
Then boyfriend, to say, like, this is what's going on. This is my situation.
I need to go get checked to find out, like, what is the actual problem.
Okay, and that's when you found out that
I have polycystic ovaries. So.
And that is
PCOS. So when you have polycystic ovaries.
One second, let me just bring your mic closer to you.
So when you have polycystic ovaries, you don't have a regular cycle. And what ends up happening is, because the eggs are not being released every month, they turn into cysts and they multiply. Is that more common
in black girls?
So I don't know if it's more common in black girls, but endometriosis is definitely more common with us. And that's like a next stage up from polycystic ovaries. So when you're not releasing eggs and they're turning into cysts, it's stopping your period. It messes with your hormone levels. And for the longest time, like, believe it or not, I could not lose weight. Like, I was pretty much the same size after my sophomore year in college to probably right before I had got pregnant with my daughter in 2017. So from 2006 to 2017, I didn't really have to buy different size clothes. And I was working out, I was eating, but it just wasn't changing. And that's one of the side effects, because your hormone levels are different. You're not dropping weight like you should. Your insulin levels are different. You're putting more insulin into your bloodstream than you're supposed to, so that stops you from losing weight. So it's like, it's like, when you think about it, oh, you're not getting a period, but it was affecting, like, everything in my body, and I didn't know that until I got into this serious relationship and decided, like, I want to have kids, but I need to know if I can. Right. So I went to see a fertility specialist, and they told me I had PCOS. And I think what bothered me the most was I had a gynecologist who for years was just like, oh, you're just irregular. Women are irregular. It's common. Like, it's nothing for you to worry about. When you want to have kids, like, you'll be fine. And just from a visual exam, not even actually doing an internal exam, the fertility specialist was like, you look like you have PCOS. So when she went inside, she could feel the eggs on my ovaries and that they had turned to cysts. So it upset me that much that she could look at me and see the signs and symptoms of PCOS. And I had this doctor for years who never questioned it when I said to him, I don't get my period regularly. Like, is
so
that
it was
okay?
a male doctor that you had first?
Yes, it was.
This other doctor that told you I could look at you, is that a male doctor?
That was a female. But I want to let everybody know that having a female doctor is not definitely in your best interest. Okay. I have horror stories within this story with a female doctor. So I don't know if it was because he was older and maybe, like, he was just still with the old times of his practice, and maybe he wasn't being updated. Maybe he wasn't going seminars and trainings like that was giving new studies about how things were going on. But like during that time, I knew a lot of women who didn't have their periods regularly, and it was irregular, and they were told they'd be okay. And some of them did have children, but then I noticed there were more who were struggling.
But wait, at any of those times, did you have pregnancy scares? Like you thought you were pregnant and you wasn't having every month, like I'm pregnant, I must be pregnant.
Yes, I want to tell you, like there was one time in college when I called my mother and I had a conversation with her about being nervous about stuff, and she was like, "Wait a minute, you're having sex?" And I was like, "That's not the important part right now. Like, there's something wrong." So yeah,
mind you, her mother's here right now.
It was very stressful. Like, I learned that it was better to go to the doctor's office to take a test than to buy it because you'd spend a lot of money. It was very costly. But yeah, those are a lot of the common things. Yeah, but I wouldn't trust whether or not I was pregnant or not on that. Now, I know some people who that works very well for. I wouldn't respect like that. No, ma'am, not at all. So, there was just a lot of different things, and when I found that out, it was like a woo-saw moment. But then again, it was kind of like, okay, so what happens now? What am I going to go through? What's the struggle going to be? How hard is this going to be?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we spoke to the doctor, I wanted to know like what came next. And basically she told me, well, wait until you're ready. We'll figure it out. But in the meantime, so like they gave me a medicine so that if my cycle wasn't regular, or if I went 60 days without having one, like on day 61, 62, whatever, I was going to take that medicine and it would induce my menstrual cycle. I would get it. I would hope I got it again. And it never regulated. So I was like taking this medicine every so often. I was also on another medicine that made me very nauseous. But it was supposed to help my insulin levels, because if they could lower my insulin levels, they thought that would help to regulate my cycle as well. But it makes you very nauseous. It makes you have stomach cramps. Depending on how much you eat in the time frame that you take it, you would have bad diarrhea. Like, it was terrible on my stomach. So I opted out very early not to take that. And I mean, it could have made a difference as far as longevity on how getting pregnant would have occurred. But for me, it was just like I was sick all the time. Like, I almost had a couple of accidents. And I was just like, that's not my life. Like, I can't do that. Like, I want to be wrong. Yes. Yes. In my car, maybe. Like, I don't even know. But like, I was just like, oh, that's not a fart. So like, when that happened a couple of times, I was just like, yeah, like I can't live my life like this. Like, people ain't gonna walk around calling me shitty because I have a medical condition. People don't care. No, people don't care about that. They just talk about you. You know that. So I opted out to not do that because it was too much on my digestive system. Yeah. See? No. So we waited. I kind of knew what it was. I tried birth control for a little while, and I got a blood clot in my leg when I broke my leg in 2000. It was December of 2010. So we can go with 2011 because it was probably like 6 days before the new year. But I broke my leg a couple of months after being on bed rest. I ended up getting a blood clot, and because of that, I was told I could no longer take birth control because birth control can induce blood clots. So like, you're at risk when you take birth control already for blood clots.
Really?
But you're more susceptible because of, I believe it's progesterone. The progesterone in the birth control
I feel like you're a fucking
increases.
doctor right now. Because I'm all listening to like...
Well, when you go through, when you've had my journey, you could, there are certain things that just stick
So
out.
what point did you actually get pregnant?
So I got pregnant in 2017.
Okay.
That was after we got married, which my doctor was kind of like, you should probably wait until you get married before you want to go down that road. My female doctor.
Down the road of what?
Getting pregnant. Starting the process. She also told me that I needed to lose 20 to 25 pounds before she would even start the in vitro process, which is what we ended up having to do.
So, at what point did you know you had to do in vitro?
When we were back the year before I got married, and I got another check, and I did a check, he did a check, and at the end of the day, they decided that we were only candidates for in vitro. So there are some steps where they give you medicine to make you more fertile, so you potentially drop more eggs, and that's like a pill process.
And then you could have did it naturally.
Yeah, well, naturally was out of the question.
Really? Okay.
Yes, that's why we are only a candidate for in vitro. So when we got to the fertility clinic, they basically said you need fertility assistance to have a child. Us having a child naturally will be God at this point.
Because of the whole non-regularity and stuff
yes,
like that?
because of me and some research things that are not defined for men yet, but they're like in the research stages that came out with him. So like we were automatically a candidate for in vitro.
In vitro. Okay.
Only in vitro, yes. So most of the time when you go to a fertility clinic, they make you start with the ovulation pills, and you do that for X amount of months. Then they have you do artificial insemination where they put the sperm and then they inject you with it, and they do that a couple of times.
Okay, can I ask about this?
Mm-hmm.
When they do that, that means your husband
Yep.
in a cup.
Yep.
And then
They inject it inside of you.
immediately?
I'm not sure how that process works, but I know it has a shelf life, so it's within, I want to say, hours, days. I'd say I don't think it's any longer than 72 hours.
So what's the difference between artificial insemination and having sex naturally? What are they just making sure it gets there?
Yes.
Okay.
So they're like putting some type of lubricant inside of your cervix so that it makes the semen easier to like reach your
Swim.
eggs. Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't have to necessarily have a swimming problem, but like it just helps it to get there faster. That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
But I know a lot of people who have done it that way and have not been successful, and they don't like that they have to go that step before they jump to in vitro. But because of where the both of us were at, they were just like, oh, you're just going to in vitro. Which for me, I felt like was better because we didn't have to go through all those stages and failing before they were like, this is what you need to do. We were already at the last case
Wait,
scenario.
hold on, I'm sorry. Am I slow, or is insemination and in vitro the same thing?
It's
Or
two
they-
different things.
Alright.
So with in
I just wanna
vitro,
be sure.
so with in vitro, they take your egg and they take his sperm and they inject it into each egg. They wait for the egg to either grow.
Oh, so you took your eggs out too?
Yes.
So they're going like this, like matchmaker.
Yes. Yep. And then
Okay.
they're waiting to see how many grow, and then from however many grow, they put one in and then they freeze the rest. So that was our only option.
Oh, you know, my
What do you
dumb ass
think?
thought they just shot the sperm up in you and was like, go, baby,
that's not
go.
the insemination. Yeah,
Oh.
that's insemination.
Yeah.
So when you say they grow, like they have to keep them. Do they keep them in like a certain, like a warm?
They're like in a
Okay.
petri dish with a heater, whatever.
Oh, wow.
But like they watch it grow, and
That
then
is
once it
Did you get to
actually
see it?
no.
Oh. Did you want to see it?
No, because even when they even when you get it and they have the egg and they're like about to put it inside, like you can't really see it. And
Really?
on the ultrasound, it's a light, so like you see because the egg is in a liquid because it's so small, so like you can't see it with your eye.
Oh.
So when you're
That's
watching it on the
amazing.
ultrasound, you just literally
I thought
see
you
it looks
could
like a
see a
shooting
bubble.
star.
Oh,
No, it
really?
looks like a shooting star because the light just flashes across the screen.
Oh wow.
So.
Somebody's calling.
So it's very
crazy.
much of a different process, but yeah, like they actually grow the egg and make sure that it's actually turned into an
That's
egg before they put it
cool.
inside of you. And then at that point, it's just like, is your body going to receive it?
Hmm.
So the first time we did it, which they say it's like a 7% chance that people get pregnant their first time doing a vitro. 7% chance, yes, on your first try. We got pregnant.
Wow.
And I was like,
Ooh.
oh my God,
Right?
we got pregnant.
Okay.
Like, okay, and it was a great feeling.
Yes, servant.
Okay.
But I will
Lucky
be
number seven.
honest. I will be honest. I always had that.
You always knew it was like golden
Something-
down there.
So, no. I always thought it was golden down there. We would.
Yes, so.
So I was definitely afforded certain opportunities from my family and by my parents that have made me be successful, but I never got anything handed to me. Like, I had to work hard in school to get good grades. I had to work hard to get jobs and internships to do what I wanted to do. So for me, it was just like, First time, there's a catch. Like, it just didn't sit well.
Right?
Yeah, like it didn't feel as great as I should have felt and how I wanted it to feel.
That
Like it was too
intuition, you knew
Yes,
something.
yes. So, I was pregnant. Everyone was happy. I lost the 20 pounds, and because of the lovely doctor who told me to lose the 20 pounds, I lost it in 2 months. And when I got pregnant,
Oh, that was quick.
Okay.
yes, at 6 weeks, I had sciatic nerve, which most pregnant women don't get that until the end of their second trimester into their third, which is like 27 to 32 weeks. And I had it at week 6. Yes. But because I lost all that weight, and my uterus blew up from accepting the egg, my uterus sat on that nerve. So I was in pain
fucking
from
ghetto.
the very beginning.
Oh my god.
But I was happy. I was pregnant. This is what I wanted. And everything seemed to be going well. They had a plan for me to have me on a dose of blood thinning medicine because of my blood clot history. So when you go through IVF and when you're pregnant, your body produces more levels of progesterone, and they give you higher doses of progesterone to help you get pregnant. So they were concerned that with all of that, I would be at risk for getting blood clots. So I was on a blood thinner from day 1 of starting IVF throughout my entire pregnancy. So they had me on what they considered a treatment dose, and they were like, you've never had a blood clot before prior to that trauma incident, so you should be fine. We'll check you well, but this is what we need you to do every day to make sure that your pregnancy meets full term. So I had to stick myself with a needle every day. And that was great. My stomach looked horrible. I had bruises. I had lumps. I used to joke with Bobby and tell him, like, you lucky I have a documented diagnosis that says I have a risk of blood clots, because if anybody saw my stomach, they'd be like, what are you doing to this pregnant woman? Like, because it looked bad. And I was getting to a point in my pregnancy where they were like, we're going to start to do ultrasounds once a month with you because of the blood clotting risk. They wanted to make sure that I did not get a blood clot that would stunt the growth of the baby. So I was super excited about that, because when you're pregnant, you normally only get 2 ultrasounds. And one of them, you have no idea what you're really looking at. And then the other one tells you what your baby is if you're lucky enough to get your child to spread his or her legs. So to have one every month from that point to the end, I was super excited about that. Unfortunately, maybe September 5th, I had what I thought was a panic attack. I was working in Newport, and my chest was hurting. I felt like I could feel the anxiety in my body, like, running through me. It was like an unreal feeling, something I've never experienced before. And it bothered me so much that I started to cry. And I called Bobby, and I was just like, something's wrong. I don't feel right. I want to come home. None of my doctors are here. And I had a team of doctors because of my pregnancy, and because I was considered, I wasn't labeled as high risk at that point, but I had a team because they were trying something out new with me, because I didn't technically have a blood clotting diagnosis, but they were concerned because of my history, so they were treating me as if I did have one.
So let me just ask one quick question, quick answer, because you said you had a team, and I'm like, damn, you got a team? Did insurance cover this process for you?
Yes.
They did?
Yes.
Wow.
So, fortunately, there's 13 states in the country that by law legally have to cover a certain percentage for fertility procedures. And so basically for our insurance, we just had to pay our out-of-pocket maximum, and then once that was covered, everything else was free for the rest of the year. I got pregnant in May, so for the rest of that year, everything that we did was paid for, because I basically paid for my out-of-pocket maximum for the procedure.
Wow.
And
So
I had
Rhode
double
Island is
coverage
one.
at that time. Yes, Rhode Island is one, Massachusetts is one, but it's only 13 states, and that's why you'll see so many women saying, like, they want to have kids and it's so expensive, and you see these movies where, like, people are going broke and their houses are going into foreclosure because they live in states where they don't provide any assistance health-wise, insurance-wise to help you out. So thankfully we're in one, well, I was in one of those states, and Massachusetts is one of those states too, so I didn't have that huge financial burden.
That's a good piece of information, guys.
Yes. So, they basically were using me as like a trial run because I didn't have a clear diagnosis.
And so you was having a panic attack.
Yeah.
You
So-
thought it was a panic attack.
Right. So I thought I was having a panic attack. My team, which was 3 different separate doctors' offices. So like one was a hematology team. I had my regular OB/GYN team, and then I still was working with the fertility clinic. So I had these 3 teams, and they were all in Providence, and I was working in Newport. And Newport actually has a maternity wing, but all of my doctors were in Providence, so I was like, that's not happening. So I drove home, and I went to the urgent care because I'm like, it's just a panic attack, like it's not anything serious. And when I was there, they ran my blood levels, everything, and they were just like, oh, your D-dimer level came back high. So your D-dimer level tells you if you have a blood clot in your lungs. So for them, they were saying the level was high, and with the level being high, it was a concern that I possibly may have a pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot in your lung. The urgent care that I was at did not have the machinery to check, so they sent me to Rhode Island Hospital. When I got to Rhode Island Hospital, they sat me in the waiting room for, I don't even know how many hours, but in that time span, I had a heat flash that like you could visibly see the sweat coming off of me. I was extremely nauseous. And they checked me. They said, oh, we don't see anything blood clot wise, but you're on a blood thinner. So if you have any blood clots in you, they're small ones, and your blood thinner will take care of it. Sent me on my very little way. Okay. 2.5 weeks later, I went into labor. At that point, I was 22 weeks pregnant.
How many months is that?
4.
Do the math for me, please.
4.5.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And so you are considered safe when you reach 24, 25. So I was 3 weeks short of that. And when I got there, so literally the day before I got there, I took my wedding ring off my finger, and because my fingers had started to swell up. So when I got there, they were like, oh, is your partner gonna come? Like, they didn't want to tell me anything. My mom was at work, my husband was at work, my grandmother and my sister were somewhere. I actually had my best friend's sister's boyfriend drive me to the hospital because my car was actually getting fixed too. So I was at home in a full-blown panic because I was in pain and didn't know what was going on. And they wanted me to go to the hospital. So I got dropped off to the hospital by somebody who is like maybe your mailman. Like, it wasn't somebody I had a regular conversation with. And when I got there, they checked my cervix, and they said I was like 4 to 5 centimeters dilated. And I'm like, what does that mean? Because I've never been pregnant before. I know you have to be dilated to a certain extent, but like at that point, I didn't know if it was okay, if it would stop. And then they just started asking questions like, well, is your partner gonna come? Is somebody gonna come and sit with you? And I'm like, yeah, my husband's coming. My husband is coming. And I stress that because in Rhode Island, we have a lot of black women who go in to hospitals, and they're treated a certain way because they're looked at as lower class because they're not married, or the perception is that they're not married. And I've had a lot of,
or they're just like a baby mama or something. Probably.
Yes, and so they get treated in a second class standard. But we have white single female women who get great treatment, and that's what's actually being talked about in society today, about how the mortality rate for black women in pregnancy has rise to an alarming rate, and people don't want to talk about why it's happening. So I felt that when I was there, and they didn't want to tell me anything. They wanted to wait for my doctor to come, and when he came, he basically told me, like, if you don't stop dilating, the baby's gonna come out, and the baby's not gonna survive. So that was really stressful because I kind of felt at one point in time I had put it in Like, you know, they say don't speak nothing into existence if you don't want it. And I felt like that whole this was too easy thing, it hit me in that moment, and I felt like shit really bad. And they gave me some medicine to try to like calm me down, so maybe that would calm my contractions down. They were like, if you make it through the night, we'll sew you up so you can go on further. And for me, I'm like, that's a great idea. Like, sew me up, I don't care what you have to do, just keep this baby inside of me. And all along, she was moving around like it wasn't affecting her. So I was having contractions, and it was like a normal day for her. She wasn't in distress, her heart rate wasn't elevated, her oxygen levels were fine. Like, she moved all the way up until she came out, and then some. So it wasn't her being affected by it, it was me. And that was hard because I felt, again, I was rejecting her. It wasn't like this just happened because of my medical condition. It was like I really took it on personally, like this was my fault. So we didn't make it through the night. I went into labor. When they broke my water, tons of blood and blood clots came out.
Like blood clots?
Yes. And
what is a blood?
Like
blood clot.
Like
It's just
I
like
think
a
people
glob.
understand.
Yeah. To the point where my mom almost passed out because it was so much. Like, it was bad. And they prepped me for a blood transfusion because I was losing so much blood and she still wasn't coming out. So during this whole procedure, it literally was, not only is your baby not going to make it, but if you don't get her out, you may die too. Like, it was that serious. We were at that point where it was just like, you can't save this baby anymore. You have to worry about yourself and save yourself. And because of all of the drugs I was on, I was out of it, and it didn't really grasp to me that that's the point that we were at. And I remembered like trying to hold her in, and I remember Bobby coming over to me, and he kind of like was rubbing my shoulder, and he was like, just let her go. And that was so hard because I almost felt like I imagined it because of the moment that we was in, but I did, and she came out, and I don't remember anything after having her because I was so much on the different types of meds and the drugs that they had given me, because they gave me Pitocin to make me have her, they gave me morphine to deal with the pain, and then the two together kind of like knocked me out in a sense, so I felt like I was hallucinating. And she came out, and he held her for maybe almost 2 hours before she passed, because she had a heartbeat but her lungs weren't breathing. And because supposedly it's Rhode Island law that they cannot perform life-saving procedures on babies that are smaller than 25 weeks. Which what they would do is give them a steroid that would help their lungs, trigger their lungs to stop breathing. But I was told that that's not, they don't do that for babies under 25 weeks. So he had to watch her pass, and I say he did because I was out of it. I didn't know it happened. I remember one point in time when they gave her to me and I was holding her, and I felt this heat, and I thought I was hallucinating at that point. And it wasn't until later on they told me like, no, she was alive. That's why you felt body heat. So that was hard, and that was it. I mean, obviously I lost a child, I lost a baby. We had to, because she was alive, we had to do a birth certificate and a death certificate. Because of how long she was alive, we had, there was a priest who came in and blessed her, so she was actually christened before she passed, because they do that for babies who are in that stage, and you know, they want their souls to go to heaven. So we went through all of that. Again, I don't remember any of that, but I know that's what happened because that's what I was told. And it wasn't until maybe sometime in the middle of that night I woke up in a frantic state because I was just like, where's my baby? And it wasn't like because she was out, like I literally thought I was still pregnant. And then it like, so it hit me all over again. And it's the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. Hands down, the worst thing. And to come back after it and to be told like, we don't know why it happened,
Mm-hmm.
was even harder, to the point where my husband was like, we're not doing this again because I'm not going to lose you for a child.
Mm-hmm.
But we found out 2 days after I discharged from the hospital that I had a blood clot in my left leg. They also found a huge blood clot attached to my placenta when everything came up. My placenta was completely shattered. So my placenta ruptured, and that's what made me go into labor. So it's kind of like the chicken before the egg. They're not sure if the blood clot was caused by the rupture. So like if my placenta was trying to seal itself off and that's what produced the blood clot, or if the blood clot was trying to pass through my placenta and that's what ruptured it. Like, so still to this day, they don't know. It's kind of like, all we know is that there was a blood clot that was left over and your placenta was ruptured, and because of the rupture, that's what made you go into early labor. So I had a blood clot, and due to having a blood clot, I had to go through the whole treatment process. So even if I wanted to start right away, it wasn't an option because I had to first get rid of that blood clot.
You mean start what right away?
Trying to have a baby
IVF?
again, because for me,
Were you ready?
It wasn't an option.
Mentally, were you ready to start again?
probably not. But not having kids is not an option for me.
Really?
No, not at all. Like, until they told me it was physically impossible, and I had that conversation with everybody who was part of my team after, because I needed Bobby to hear what they were saying. If any of them told me, if you do this again, you're putting your life at risk, then that would have been something for me to stop and think about. Nobody said that. So for me, I was just like, we're going to do this again. We need to do this again. And I think I was kind of like in like crazy baby mode at that point in time. I wasn't really clear. Like, I was fixated. Like, I need a baby, I need a baby, I need a baby.
Did losing a child make you feel like I want a baby even more now? Or did it heighten it? Or no?
I don't know if it heightened it.
It
Didn't stop me from wanting.
Okay.
And I think it
You're good.
might have hindered
Like,
my
that's
grieving
strong.
process a bit. Like, I don't think I fully got to grieve because I was so focused on restarting.
Okay.
So I think that's what I'm saying. Like, I think I went in crazy baby mode at that point in time, where like I should have been processing and accepting the fact that I lost a child and that there was a medical reason that they themselves could not explain at this point. So I should probably wait and take the time that is necessary. None of that was registering to me at that point in time when we were starting, or when I wanted to start again. Like, I didn't care. They told me I could do it. Nobody said I would die from doing it. So I was like, let's go. It took a year before they would let me start.
Okay,
So,
because
I had a year.
It's crazy. You would be like, let's start again. I'm like, I don't want to do this no more.
And that was his attitude. That
was
was
your husband's
wholeheartedly.
attitude.
Yes, that was wholeheartly his attitude. Like, I didn't marry you to watch you die and have a child. That was his attitude. So it was
But
like,
did you?
no.
But you weren't one of those people that like, I want to give you a child. Like, because
No.
people say that to me, that sounds a little weird.
No.
I wanted to give myself. I wanted to have a child myself.
I am a woman. It is my God-given right to have children because that's what we were put here for. So for me not to be able to do that, I felt like less of a woman. I felt like I wasn't
would
right
never
within
understand
myself.
that.
Evan doesn't understand that.
Yes, but
he
that
asks me why I want kids all the time.
I don't understand that part.
yeah.
Like-
well, because I mean,
I don't think anybody's.
according to the Bible, y'all were put here to provide and to protect and to take care of us. So no, you wouldn't understand. But we were supposed to be here to provide children to populate the world. And if I can't do that,
think that
how can I consider
necessarily
myself
true.
a woman?
I don't see it like that.
I know, but like
But
that's
I feel like
Yeah.
when you get a fucking period, when you're fucking playing with fucking baby dolls, when you're like, you know what I mean? Like, here, put that apron on. Like, it's like, it's like you.
I think that's race consciousness. So we were talking about like you felt like as a woman that was your right and that was like your purpose.
Yeah.
I think people's purpose is to affect lives. Like, and so you may have to have baby to affect their lives, but I feel like some people's purpose. I feel like there's a bigger purpose for
but
me.
I
like,
feel like that does something for you.
Yes. Because I feel like on a daily basis, prior to having my children, I was affecting lives. And the lives that were affected were not appreciating their children. So why am I not able to have a child?
So that's another thing too, because I think a lot of when there's a woman that can't have a child, and when you see other people that don't necessarily want a child or don't necessarily take it serious or don't appreciate the fact that they're able to give birth, I think that is also another factor that really like weighs in on.
It definitely is. And I mean, even when it's a good situation, you look at people and you're like, oh, that's a beautiful family. I want a family.
Was adoption
Yes.
Okay.
But I needed to exhaust biological first before I could get to that point. And that's still on the table. We have that conversation quite frequently, actually.
She has twins that she doesn't want to take care of.
It's because their daddy be acting up, so I be having to give him.
So next month it may be a possibility to adopt too.
That might be a lot for my plate.
She's willing to provide like money and stuff like that.
I'll pay for them.